Hello and welcome to the Faded Wildflower Crochet. My name is Rachel. Today's video is something that I have been wanting to do since I started this channel basically, and that is a review of Hobbii yarns. Now, if you are watching this channel, there is a 100% chance that you have seen an ad for Hobbii yarn somewhere. Maybe just an ad pop up on Instagram or one here on YouTube, or maybe you've even seen some collabs that Hobbii has done with some other content creators. And I know that so many of you, just like me, are curious, is Hobbii yarn actually as good as all of these people make it seem? So today I'm going to be trying out 4 different types of Hobbii yarn to see if I think that they're worth it, specifically for Amigurumi. And I'm sure that I put this in my title, but this is completely unsponsored. I spent my own money and Hobbii has no idea who I am. So I thought I would just say that up front. So first of all, before I get into the yarn, let's talk a little bit about the Hobbii app. I ordered from the Hobbii app on my phone. I don't always love downloading apps, but I thought, why not go ahead and try it out? And I'm so glad that I did because it is such an easy app to use. You have all of your different tabs of where you can order the yarns, where you can look at patterns, which we'll get into in a moment. And each yarn has so many different beautiful color options. As you can see, like the color options are so bright and beautiful. So I'm really excited about that part of it. Because if you guys have been watching this channel, you know that sometimes I'll find a yarn that I love, but it only comes in like 2 colors. And so I was really happy to see all the different color options of each of the different Hobbii yarns. Ordering was really, really simple. It was a breeze, and my yarn came in 1 week, and that's it. When it came all the way from Denmark, I was so impressed with this. So I do not actually remember the total that I paid for these yarns, but I will put it on the screen. And then I believe shipping was only $6.99, which again, for international shipping, that's pretty great. I do also believe that they were running some sort of sale at the time that I ordered, but it does seem to be pretty common that they run sales kind of similar again to how Joanne does it on their app as well. So far, so good. I'm pretty impressed with the shipping process. I'm pretty impressed with the app itself. So far, looking at these yarns, I'm really excited to get into them. The pattern that we're going to use, I thought it would be really fun to choose one of the many free patterns that Hobbii has available on their app. It did take me a little while to choose one just because I only ordered 1 color of each of these yarns, and it feels like most Amigurumi patterns, you need more than 1 color. But I did settle on this cute little heart, and I thought that would be a fun, simple little Amigurumi to make for each of these yarns. So without further ado, let's go take a closer look at these guys. Okay, here are all 4 of the yarns that I chose. It was so hard to choose which yarns to review for today's video. I had such a hard time choosing which yarns I wanted to review and then which colors of these yarns. As you can see, these colors are so beautiful and there are just so many different options of each one, which I will be putting up on the screen. But let's go ahead and start with a closer look at this one, which is the Hobbii Everyday Acrylic Extra Large. Editing me here to say that when I went to go do screen recordings to show all the different colors of this yarn, it was no longer available. I couldn't find it anywhere, and I even Googled it and the page came up, but when I clicked on it, it said that the item was not found. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. I'm also not sure why this is the 3rd time that this has happened to me. I'm not sure if I'm cursed. I'll keep you updated, but I thought I would just let you know that this yarn is currently not available on the Hobbii website. Size 4. And like I said, acrylic yarn here. And do we have a color? Looks like we just have numbers there as far as the color goes. And it does seem like on the website, the colors are numbered. I feel like on camera, this is coming off a little bit more on the red side of hot pink, but really there you can kind of see it's a more blue toned pink, which I really like. So I'm trying to think of what this feels like in the skein itself. I would say that it's comparable to the Lion Brand Basic Stitch, which is one of my favorites. So we will see. And this, did I say how many yards? This has 218 yards, which is pretty good. So, and again, I'll put up prices and all of that on the screen as we go. Now, I feel like anytime I mention that I do not like cotton yarn or I just haven't found my perfect cotton yarn yet, Hobbii Rainbow Cotton Yarn is mentioned all the time. Now there are different numbers and I'm not sure what they all mean, but I got the 8 out of 8 of the cotton yarn. And how many yards? 82 yards, size 3 light. And again, this is a beautiful color that we have here. This like really like aqua teal blue. It is coming off a little bit darker on camera than in real life, but again, we just have a number for the color here, not a name. So that is that. It is so beautiful. It feels quite soft, but again, does have that like stiffness that cotton yarn tends to have. So we'll see how this one works out. Then we have this toucan yarn, which I feel like this one is actually coming across on camera perfectly. I always want to make sure I get the colors as accurate as I can, because I know that's a big thing, is that when you order a yarn, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what shade it is, but this is coming across perfectly. It is such a beautiful lavender lilac color. And this is a super bulky yarn, 131 yards, which is again pretty good. And I would say, how does this feel? I'm having a hard time deciding what exactly I think this texture feels like the most. I would say it's kind of similar to like a Parfait Chunky, but it's a little bit more velvety than the Parfait Chunky. And it has like a little bit more of a sheen to it, if you can tell. I was having a hard time deciding between the toucan yarn, and I think it's called the honey bunny yarn, which is another type of chenille yarn. I ended up going with this one. It is a little bit newer, so I thought it would be really fun to try it out. So that's that one. And then of course, you guys know that if you've been watching the channel any amount of time, I love velvet yarns. It's my favorite texture as far as yarns go. This one is called the Boheme Velvet Double, which it's quite a bit thinner than I expected it to be, just to be honest. I was expecting it to be a little bit more like this one. I can't remember if it said on the website what weight it was supposed to be, but it doesn't say anywhere on here. And the skein is also a little smaller than I thought it was going to be. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention to the website, because this one does not have all of the information on the packaging itself like the other ones do. Like, I don't see a size or a weight or anything like that. So I'm not sure, but I got it in this beautiful orange color because I feel like velvet yarns, it's really hard to find orange, and I'm wanting to do some rainbow projects and I was missing orange out of the rainbow. So that is that one. I think since this one's in my hands already, we'll go ahead and start with it, and we'll start making our cute little hearts. That is our first one done with the Boheme Velvet. And this pattern is very cute. I think it'll look cuter once I add a little smile right here. But this yarn, I really liked it. Of course, it is very soft, but it also has a really nice structure to it. Some more velvet and soft yarns will just be a little bit more drapey, I guess, if for lack of a better term, which I think would be really good for something like a scarf or a garment. But for amigurumi, you do kind of want your yarn to have a nice structure to it where it will hold its shape a little bit better. So that is what I experienced with this one. Now, the cons for me are that I do wish that it was a little bit thicker. I did have to end up using a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook, which is a bit smaller than most of the other velvet yarns that I really like in my collection. They are more of a bulky weight, where I would say that this is like not quite a bulky weight. It really is not quite a 4, like maybe somewhere in between a 4 and a 5. I'm not sure what they classify it as, because like I said, it didn't say on the label itself. Yarn weight really is like a personal preference, so you may enjoy this thinner weight a little bit more if that's what you're into, but for me, I do tend to enjoy a more bulky weight yarn. Other con for me is that I'm getting a call from a telemarketer, but that's not what I'm talking about. So the other con for me is that I do wish that it came with a little bit more yarn. This is not a ton of yarn for the price. I cannot remember the price of the yarn. I will put it on the screen, and I did get it on sale. So For the sale price, I do think it's a nice amount of yarn, but for the full price, I'm not so sure. Just for me personally, I do feel like it was a little bit expensive for the amount of yarn that you get. But I do really like this overall. This color is gorgeous. Maybe not the color that you would normally use for a heart, but gorgeous nonetheless. This would be really cute for like a carrot maybe, or even a pumpkin in the fall. So I really, really like it. And there were so many, like I said, beautiful colors to choose from. I'm probably not going to shut up about colors in this video because there are just so many beautiful colors, and I'm really impressed with the colors that I got. And so anyway, I did forget to say as a pro for this one is that it does not shed. Now, of course, I only had to sew up in between the two top parts, and then I had to sew up the bottom, but I was really trying to work it through a lot of stitches, and it was barely, like, I think you can see like a teeny little bit right there, right where it was cut. And other than that, no shedding at all, which is incredible. You guys know I love a yarn that does not shed too much. So anyways, let's move on. So I actually already started crocheting before I filmed like the little intro part, but I have moved on to the acrylic yarn. I've got a little bit done so far, so let's continue working on that. I am using a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook, and it matches. Anyways, I am going to work on this next little heart, and I'll check in with you guys in a little bit. Okay, that is the second one done in our acrylic yarn. And you can see that overall it looks pretty good, but right here I got off on my tension a little bit, and I'm not really sure if that's the yarn to blame or just me, but that is that. And again, these are bigger than I expected them to be. It's really just about the same size as the velvet yarn that we just tried, which is interesting because I did use a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook for this guy. When I was in the skein, I would say that it felt a little bit more like the basic stitch yarn, which I really enjoy. But once it's worked up, it feels a little bit more similar to Red Heart Super Saver. I feel like that's the yarn I would compare it to the most, except for that when you touch it, it has a little bit of a fuzziness to it. And I know a lot of people don't like these little fuzzes, and they'll like use a lighter to like burn them off, but I kind of like the fuzzies. I think that they make it feel a little bit softer than it would otherwise. So is this my favorite new acrylic yarn? No, probably not, but it is pretty easy to work with. I think it only split for me one time, and the color is beautiful, and you get quite a bit of it for the price. If you're looking for a line of acrylic that has a lot of colors, then this one might be for you. I don't think I will fully make the switch. I do tend to just need my acrylic yarn to have lots of colors that are more neutral, and I have Lion Brand skein tones for that. I don't feel like that one can be beat in terms of neutral like skin tone, which I use them to make custom dogs and cats. But this one does have a lot more bright, fun, vibrant colors. So I definitely wouldn't discount buying this again, but I don't think it's going to become my new favorite by any means. So let's move on to the toucan yarn. This one I am so excited about. Like I said, I think this is one of their newer yarns, and look at this beautiful lilac color. So let's get started on this one. Okay, the heart with the toucan yarn is done. He's pretty cute. Look at that stitch definition. I am really, really impressed with the stitch definition and the structure. I would say texture-wise, it feels a lot like the Premier Parfait Chunky. I've only used that yarn a couple of times, but I would say that it's a very similar texture if you like that texture, but it's thicker and a little bit more like kind of like if Parfait Chunky and Bernat Blanket had a baby. it would be this yarn with like a little bit more of a sheen than either one of those yarns have. Like, can you see that little bit of sheen that it has to it? Which I personally like. Some people don't like the sheen, some people do. I personally like it. I think it looks really, really cute. Worked up nicely. Now it does shed a little bit. As you can see, I was trying to run the yarn through several stitches and it did shed. It did take it quite a bit longer to shed than like other yarns that I've had. Like, you guys know that I work with the Premier Just Chenille a lot, and that one, like, you run it through like 2 times and it's shedding all over the place. This one did take quite a bit longer to shed, but I would definitely not say that it's like a shed-free yarn, but I really like it. I love the size. Look at the size difference between that one and the velvet one. It is a huge, huge size difference, and I think that they both have their place, but I do love a chunky yarn every now and then, and like I said, the stitch definition is gorgeous, but I'm very impressed, and there's quite a bit left as well. So that's really exciting. So now let's move on to our last one, which is this little baby cotton yarn. It is so much smaller than the other ones. It's going to be a nice tiny little heart to finish off our day. So let's go ahead and get started on this one. Okay, that's our last heart done for the day. This was the 8x8 rainbow cotton, and I can see why people like this yarn. It is definitely still a cotton yarn that is quite structured, but it doesn't have quite as much of a stiffness to it as some other cotton yarns do. I just filmed the video last week where I made bags for my kids' teachers, and I made one of them in cotton yarn. And that yarn was so stiff, it was honestly like hurting my hands after a little while. And that yarn split quite a bit. I did not have those problems with this yarn. It was really quite easy to work with. It does have a much more stiff, structured feeling than obviously something like this does, or even really something like this. But let's compare sizes really quick. So these are actually very similar sizes to each other. I thought this one was going to be a lot smaller, but I did make both of them in the 3.5 millimeter crochet hook. I honestly probably could have gone down a hook size for this guy, and it probably would have been better because I was having to pull my stitches a little bit tighter than I normally do just to make sure there were no gaps. I know that with cotton yarn, if you use too small of a hook, it makes your stitches even tighter and even more rough, so I didn't really want to do that. So anyways, it did work out pretty well, although you can see that I made a mistake right here. I think that I'm not sure what happened there, if the yarn kind of started to split. Can you see that right there? And it caused a little gap right there. That's okay. These things happen. I'm not going to go back and take it out, but I do think his little smile is going to go right there anyway, so it'll probably cover it up. Overall, I would say that I did really like this yarn, but I still don't know if I am a cotton yarn convert quite yet. I do just tend to prefer to crochet my plushies in either acrylic yarn or velvet yarn or plushie yarn, just because it does give them a nice huggable texture, whereas I feel like cotton is like mostly on the structure end of the spectrum. Now, if you like that structure, I could see you really liking this yarn. Again, the colors are so amazing. Like, look at that color. I will say though that there is not a ton left in this skein. Like, you can see how much flatter this skein is after using it. So you really don't get a whole lot per skein. So that is just something to keep in mind. It is getting quite late in the day and I need to go to the post office and cook dinner and do all the other things that I need to do. So I will probably give these little cuties their smiles, and then I will check in with you guys tomorrow for my final thoughts on Hobbii yarn. Hi, Lily. Are you feeling disgruntled because you weren't in this week's video? I'm so sorry to hear that. You're kind of right in the way. Yeah, it's time for me to film my outro. Okay. Okay, I can do it later. I'm so sorry. So I did finish all 4 of the hearts, and only after finishing all 4 of them did I realize that I messed up on the pattern. I was looking at the picture and I was like, why are mine so much longer than hers? Which is a really weird sentence that I just had to say. But I realized that I just added 2 extra rows that were not in the pattern at all. I just added them. Sometimes reading comprehension is not my strong suit, but I still think that they turned out really cute. So I think the pattern was easy to follow. Again, if I had better reading comprehension skills, I would have made it even cuter. But I love that Hobbii partners with different pattern designers to come up with their patterns. I think that's really cool. And there are so many options. And I have my eye on this cute little mermaid. So keep an eye out. I may be making her in the future. So I thought I would come and add some final thoughts of what I think about these Hobbii yarns. Let's start with the velvet yarn. I, again, do really like this yarn. The way that it looks in the end is just so darn cute. The stitch definition for a velvet yarn is amazing. I was looking on the Hobbii website, and it does in fact say that this is a size 4 yarn. I just didn't see that when I was ordering it. Again, reading comprehension, not my strong suit sometimes. But it did say on the website that this is a size 4 yarn. And it also said how many yards there were, but again, just kind of missed that part. Those were my only 2 complaints about this yarn, is that I do wish that it was a bit thicker just for my own preference. And if I just would have read a little closer, then I would have seen how many yards, and I would have seen that this was a size 4 and not a size 5. But other than that, it was such an easy yarn to work with. It's so soft, and again, it has that amazing structure to it. So will I be repurchasing this yarn? Yes, I do think that I would repurchase this yarn, especially if I had something in mind where I wanted it to be a little bit thinner than some of my other patterns. And also if I wanted something to have this amount of stitch definition, because I do feel like even my favorite velvet yarns don't have this amount of stitch definition to them. And again, I have to mention the colors. There's just so many different color options that I would definitely not hesitate to buy this again in the future. But Hobbii, if you're listening, if you want to make a bulky weight yarn, like just like this one, but a bulky weight, I will buy it over and over again because I really do like this yarn. So now let's talk about the acrylic yarn, and I'll have the full names of the yarns on the screen. I cannot remember all, and it's like Amigo Extra Large or something. I'm not even sure. I think I related this to a Super Saver yarn after I had made it yesterday. And that's not really quite accurate now that I'm feeling it. And I was feeling this in comparison to some other things that I've made in different yarns. It's definitely not as scratchy. The end product is not nearly as scratchy as something made out of Super Saver. I would say that it's actually a little bit closer to the Big Twist Value yarn, if you are familiar with that one. I reviewed actually both of those yarns when I did my Rainbow Squid video, and I was feeling them in comparison, and I would say it's a lot closer to that, but with the addition of, oh, it's got fuzz, occupational hazard. But this does have that little bit of fuzziness to it that I was talking about. And again, if you are a fuzz hater, if you're the type of person that likes to like burn off the fuzz, you're probably not going to like this yarn. But I personally do kind of like that feeling. It gives it a nice texture. I don't mind the fuzziness. I think it's nice. But will I be repurchasing this yarn? Most likely not. I just think that there are so many options for acrylic yarn that I can just go down to Joann and get. But if I were trying to find a specific color and I could only find it on Hobbii, I wouldn't hesitate to order this again because it is a nice yarn. It's quality yarn. You get a lot of it for the amount that you pay. So I wouldn't hesitate to purchase this again. But will it become my go-to? Probably not. Okay, now let's talk about this one, the star of the show, in my opinion, the Toucan yarn plushie. I love this yarn. I really do. The more that I like touch and feel this plushie, the more I fall in love with it. It was easy to work with. It is nice and bulky. I think I forgot to say this yesterday when I was working on this guy, but I did use a size 5mm crochet hook, which is the same size that I use when I use the Bernat blanket yarn. So it is quite thick, but it is so much easier to work with than Bernat blanket, in my opinion. Bernat blanket does have a tendency to kind of hurt my hands after a little while because it's just kind of a lot more stiff than this yarn is, whereas this one is more soft, but still does have that nice structure to it, as if all of these yarns that I tried have a really great structure to them. So this one, I feel like I would definitely repurchase. I have so many plushies in mind that I would love to recreate with this yarn. Like I said, love the weight of it. I love the texture. Now, I do have to take off a little bit of a point for the fact that it does shed just a bit. It's not the most egregious shedding yarn that I've ever worked with, so it doesn't make it where I wouldn't purchase it again. I do think I would repurchase it, but I do wish that it shed just a little bit less. Okay, let's talk about our final heart, the 8/8 rainbow cotton. I'll put it on the screen, but this little guy, and actually it's quite a bit bigger than I thought it was going to be. It's really not too much smaller than the velvet yarn here. I thought it was going to be a lot smaller, but it actually worked up quite a bit thicker and bigger than I thought that it was going to be. Now, this yarn, like I said, when I was working with it, it was really, really easy to work with, but the end product does have that more stiff feeling that a cotton yarn is going to give you. I don't dislike it, but again, cotton yarn is just never really been my go-to when it comes to making amigurumi. I tend to either use acrylic yarn or a plushie yarn. But will I be repurchasing this yarn? Probably not for amigurumi, unless I have something really, really specific in mind. But I think that I would repurchase this yarn to make a bag. I have a specific project in mind, a bag that I want to make. And I think I will be repurchasing this cotton yarn to make that bag, because I think the structure of it will be absolutely perfect. And the fact that it doesn't split too bad. I think I maybe had one little section where it split, that it's just really easy to work with. It glides a lot nicer on the hook than other cotton yarns that I have used before. So like I said, it's probably not going to become my go-to when it comes to amigurumi, but I do think I'll repurchase it to make some other projects in the future. So I have to say, at the end of this, I'm quite impressed with Hobbii yarn. I loved the process of ordering them, the fact that it only took a week for them to arrive. I liked the pattern that I chose, even though I did it wrong. And honestly, all 4 of these yarns are a nice, solid yarn. Some of them are maybe just not for me, but I would recommend all 4 of these yarns, depending on the project that you're wanting to do with them. Now, the one that I like the most personally is the toucan yarn, if it's not already obvious, and I definitely will be repurchasing this yarn. But all 4 of these yarns, if I had a specific project in mind, I definitely wouldn't hesitate to reorder them, and I think that that is honestly a glowing review from me. You will have to let me know what you thought about our cute little hearts. Which one was your favorite? Have you ever ordered from Hobbii before? Have you had a good experience like me? And which one is your favorite? And what other yarns from Hobbii should I try next? Because now I'm really intrigued. They have a fluffy yarn that I was this close to ordering the fluffy yarn to review for today, but I just did a video reviewing fluffy yarns recently, so I chose the ones that I did instead. But I am really, really interested in that yarn, and let me know what other kind of yarns you want to see me review, because I would absolutely love to do that. If you did like today's video, be sure to hit the like button. You can subscribe and stick around. Let me know what other kind of videos you want to see next. You can follow me on Instagram. It's The Faded Wildflower. And I always forget to mention, I have an Etsy shop where you can buy patterns as well as custom plushies. And again, thank you for watching. I will see you next time.